We are living in a world full of technology. Years ago, students who were homeschooled used only printed material. Distance learning was done through using the U.S. mail service. But with the adoption of the Internet, distance learning has become faster and easier to accomplish. Students are able to take classes in between trips to the office, picking up the kids, and running on a treadmill at the local gym. While this type of learning fits well for people who have active lifestyles, there is very little, if any, interaction between students. However, with the creation of virtual environments, students are finding ways of overcoming this isolation by joining 3D virtual world environments. This presentation will be to look at how the technology of 3D virtual worlds can be used in education. We will look at 3 research articles focusing on how virtual worlds such as Second Life, Active Worlds, and Move are used in building student engagement, collaboration, and successful learning outcomes. Presentation objectives. After this presentation, you'll be able to explain the difference between each 3D virtual world, be able to use Second Life to conduct a discussion using either the jigsaw or fishbowl method, be able to use chat features in one of the virtual worlds, be able to tell 3 important findings of the River City project. History of Second Life. Second Life was created by Linden Labs in 2002 as a virtual environment for Linden employees to test their hardware. Initially known as Linden World and used as a 3D shooter game where users created worlds with realistic terrains, buildings, guns, user-created creatures, and weaponry used to shoot at buildings and the terrain. In October of 2002, the beta of Second Life became open to the public, where users were able to create avatars and interact with other Second Life users. Users were also able to purchase land using Linden dollars, build their own virtual worlds, and visit other regions. History of Second Life continued. In 2007, graphics were greatly improved and voice chat was added to provide users with the ability to use their own voices to chat more realistically with other Second Life users. Because of Second Life's graphics and voice abilities and the ability to create custom worlds, colleges and universities started subscribing to Second Life in order to enhance the college experience for their students. Overview of Second Life. User worlds containing rich immersive environments, customizable avatars with the ability to purchase accessories for these avatars. Users can also interact with their environment by clicking on objects. Users can toggle between first-person and third-person views. Users can chat in real time using the chat feature as well as using their microphones to speak to others.
In the United States, we spend over $815 billion per year on education. Yet education is increasingly viewed, especially by the emerging gamer generation, as ineffective, irrelevant, and unproductive. Clearly, it's time to rethink the method by which educators deliver knowledge to learners. Traditional lectures do little to hold the interest of a generation weaned on MTV and World of Warcraft. Enter Second Life, where learners become immersed in their own education. Second Life is a 3D virtual world that can provide and deliver a unique educational setting. Meet Ruth A. Boucher, Wizo, and Marissa Moody. We are your guides to some exciting educational experiences happening in Second Life. Join us as we take you on a guided tour of some fascinating ways that the world of education is being transformed in this interactive virtual world. New visitors to Second Life are dropped at Orientation Island, where they are taught the basics of navigating the terrain and communicating with others. After learners become familiar with the basics of Second Life, it's easy for them to suspend their sense of disbelief and feel immersed in their environment. This makes Second Life an ideal tool to practice role-playing as an instructional tool. At Renaissance Island, learners can enter into the world of a Shakespearean play and interact with the other characters. Be sure to wear your period costume. Or imagine visiting Roma, where you might take part in a reenactment of the pageantry, holidays, and gladiator combat of ancient Rome. How else could students so easily experience a period of history as when they are immersed in a virtual replica of it, and talking to other avatars about the landscape and the situations they encounter? In Second Life, students can participate in a virtual scavenger hunt in which they locate information relevant to their field of study. They might search for objects that have definitions attached to them, a fun, interactive way to build vocabulary. Or they might learn to identify works of art by locating particular pieces in a gallery. Wouldn't it be great if instructors could take their students on guided tours of the fascinating places they are studying in their real-world classrooms? With Second Life, students can tour replicas of locations they would otherwise never visit, the Sistine Chapel, or the inside of a Dell computer, all without setting foot outside of their real-world classroom. Many educational venues offer a virtual sandbox similar to this area in English Village, where students can experiment with building objects and environments. Learners can work together to collaborate on a project and co-create virtual 3D objects. Immersive education gives participants a sense of being there when attending a real-life class or training session in person isn't possible, practical, or desirable. Virtual worlds provide educators and students with the ability to connect and communicate in a way that greatly enhances the learner's ability to understand the feelings and emotions of people in situations different from their own. Second Life can provide an opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes. For example, learners can become part of and interact in a custom-built environment such as UC Davis's virtual hallucinations site, where they can get a sense of what it feels like to experience schizophrenia.
You're worthless.
Or what would it feel like to take a walk inside a Van Gogh painting? Second Life users can experience these sensations. Second Life is being adopted as a platform by more and more institutions of learning, and developers of related educational applications have taken notice. Sloodle is an open-source project which combines the Moodle learning management system with the rich, interactive 3D multi-user Second Life virtual environment. For example, an object within a virtual world might ask quiz questions of avatars who are visiting that world. The avatar's response would be sent back to the learning management system to be tabulated. Instructors can set their students loose on self-paced tutorials like the learning kiosks set up at the Ohio University's Second Life campus. In addition, educators can join groups related to their area of expertise, such as a Thursday night social for members of the International Society for Technology and Education, all held in Second Life. Collaboration and exchange is possible with colleagues from around the world. The sense of actually meeting with colleagues is much stronger and immediate in a virtual world than is possible through other communication tools such as blogs or email. And Second Life breaks down language barriers with support of the Debabbler language translator. Whiteboards are another popular educational tool. For example, this whiteboard in the English Village site functions as a perpetual source of general information about this educational site. In addition, a lecturer may use a whiteboard in Second Life for a PowerPoint presentation. Afterwards, the presenter may allow participants to add the whiteboard presentation to their inventory for future reference. While this video was being produced, a first look at voice support for Second Life was implemented. Voice support expands the possibilities of Second Life by adding another layer to the simulation of reality and immersion of the user within the virtual world. While the possible uses of Second Life as an educational tool are still developing, Second Life does comprise a sumptuous 3D virtual world rich in 21st century educational opportunities. If you are interested in learning more about the educational uses of Second Life, consider subscribing to a relevant blog such as www.carlcap.blogspot.com or joining one of the many educational groups in Second Life.
In this slide, we see an example of a 3D virtual library at SUNY Plattsburgh. Notice the avatar standing in the library. This is the avatar that we created for this presentation. We used the following article to look at how Second Life was used in education. The aim of the research was to assess the applicability of Second Life for collaborative learning. The authors state that students learn better when they work in groups. Students who work in small groups tend to achieve relatively higher levels of academic outcomes and more likely to develop the skills needed for a successful career. This article looked at two methods of collaborative learning, jigsaw and fishbowl. In this slide, we see how the jigsaw technique looks. In this slide, we see how the fishbowl looks. The authors concluded that learning was enhanced by several of Second Life's affordances and metaphors, combined with the project-based instructional design. They liked how students were able to customize their avatars because it allowed students to create their own identities and thus helped shy students to express themselves easier. However, the authors point out some negative aspects of Second Life that could inhibit learning. They point to problems such as ease of use, graphic intensive, open source structure, collaborative learning. Now, ease of use, Second Life has a steep learning curve, and some users have trouble navigating to other worlds as well as learning how to control their avatar. Graphic intensive, users with older machines may have problems with navigating Second Life because of the rendering and the requirements of newer computers with faster processors. Now, the problem with being an open source structure is that users from all walks of life can access Second Life, and this makes it hard to restrict user interactions. Many of the Second Life users sometimes express themselves using colorful metaphors, so it's not really an ideal place for younger students. Also, for collaborative learning, users are not able to browse the internet together or share files, which is a big part of collaborative learning. Our next section is going to be about active worlds. Active worlds is one of the more popular 3D virtual worlds. It was established in 1997, so it is the oldest of the virtual world platforms. AW is a client-server application that allows developers to create 3D virtual worlds for users to visit and interact with. It can be used synchronous and asynchronously. Another feature of Active Worlds is that users are able to access this platform online without having to download huge files that can come with malware that some other platforms may include in their downloads. This 3D virtual world mainly relies on text-based chat, but offers audio chat in some worlds. Another interesting feature is that users can be represented as avatars in a 3D environment. They have the opportunity to interact with other avatars and the environment and also choose the avatar they want to be. Active Worlds is very easy to learn and use. The user interface has four main windows: the 3D environment, a chat tool, an integrated web browser, and the navigational window. Active Worlds was tested by two groups. They are shown in Case Study 1 and Case Study 2. The first case study is a course called Business Computing Skills 1000. It was used asynchronously by undergraduate students. In the first case study, the goal of the course was to foster business computing skills. This class was commonly delivered in various formats, such as in a traditional classroom, in a web-based environment, and in a 3D virtual environment. However, in this research, the Active Worlds version of B-Core was used. All concepts were presented using Microsoft Word, Excel, Access, and PowerPoint. Students were required to do weekly assignments and group work. In this slide, you see the setting and learning context of B-Core. It is a 3D world that is made up of a spacious rectangular park that is surrounded by a background picture of the mountains that frames Boulder, Colorado. If a student moves towards east or west along one of the roads named after each of the applications, for example, Microsoft Word Lane, they will find a series of one-room buildings. Each of these buildings represents one of the different applications covered in the course. Each building represents a software application and an assignment that has to be completed with that application. Within each building, there are signs. These signs are linked to web resources. These resources help students to learn the application. If a student clicks on a specific sign, an integrated web browser is activated to load a resource website. In this slide, we see the back of one of the buildings. In the back of each building, there is a small patio that provides a place where learners can meet and collaborate on group projects. Moreover, in each patio, there are signs that are hypertext links to web-based resources for working on group projects. Case Study 2 uses Active Worlds in a synchronous informal learning environment. This case study focuses on Intro to RWX, Renderware Scripts, Modeling. It is a 3D object modeling course for learning how to create original Active World objects. The Active World browser uses Renderware to display 3D environments. It relies on Renderware scripts to define objects in the 3D environment. Case Study 2 uses Active Worlds in a synchronous informal learning environment. This case study focuses on Intro to RWX, Renderware Scripts, Modeling. It is a 3D object modeling course for learning how to create original Active World objects. The Active World browser uses Renderware to display 3D environments. It relies on Renderware scripts to define objects in the 3D environment. This class was delivered by Magine, the instructor, in a synchronous in-world learning environment. The students that took the class were regular users of Active Worlds. The class was discussion-oriented, and the chat tool relied only on text. The text appeared bold-faced, making it easier for students to read and respond to others. Magine presented a concept of 3D modeling using the chat tool. Then she illustrated the concept using a sample 3D object in the 3D setting. Finally, the instructor presented further illustrations of how a technique or concept was constructed by providing the scripts of the object in the integrated web browser. This allowed learners to follow the RWX script and see the final object in the 3D setting. Our third and final virtual world is Move and EcoMove. Both of these projects are from Harvard University Graduate School of Education, and they are researcher created, so therefore they are not open source, and we will discuss them in the further remaining slides. The MOVE system is created in year 2000 for the River City Research Project. In the MOVE system, there is a virtual town called River City. The residents of the city are becoming ill, so students play as visitors, work together in small research teams to help solve this problem. When solving this problem, students apply their 21st century skills and technology skills. This is how they learn. In this next slide, here are some pictures of the MOVE system. Students can collect data from water samples, gather information and clues from residents, and develop controlled experiments to test their hypotheses. There were three main findings in this research. Students were able to conduct inquiry in virtual worlds and were motivated. This is actually very positive feedback and verified the effectiveness of the virtual environment. In the three MOVE groups, the one who had the best outcome is the one with teachers and mentors guidance. This indicated that the role of the teacher is still very important even in the virtual environment. Also, they found when using different assessment methods, the results were different too. A performance assessment may work better in showing students' learning outcomes than the standardized test. In 2010, the next generation of the MOVE system became available, the EcoMove. This time, the researchers' aim was to teach middle school students about the ecosystem. So this time, researchers not only focused on the virtual environment itself, but also combine it with a real field trip experience. They also developed an augmented reality mobile app to cooperate with it.
EcoMove is an exciting new curriculum research project at the Harvard Graduate School of Education that uses immersive virtual environments to teach middle school students about ecosystems and causal patterns. It includes two computer-based modules, Pond and Forest, within a 4-week inquiry-based ecosystems curriculum. Here we are in the pond module. We can walk around the pond and see all the different plants and animals, like these ducks. The camera tool lets us take pictures, and saving the photo displays a virtual field guide with information about each of the organisms we find. We can also walk under the water to see the species living there. And using a virtual microsubmarine, we can shrink down and see the microscopic life in the pond at different levels of magnification. The environment around the pond includes features like a golf course, roads, and houses. Following this runoff pipe leads us to a drainage ditch near a new housing development, where we meet a landscaper putting down fertilizer. Throughout the environment, on different days, we meet virtual characters like Manny, who may provide useful information. Back at the pond, the water measurement tools let us take various measurements of the water in the pond, such as phosphates and turbidity. Students can collect weather and population data as well. The calendar tool lets us travel through time in order to see how the pond has changed on different days. Here, it's raining. When we walk under the water, we can see how cloudy the water is. The turbidity is higher, and we can also take another measurement. The data view lets us see and compare data we've collected. The Atom Tracker tool lets us see what happens to atoms in the ecosystem over time. We can find and track 3 atoms: carbon, phosphorus, and oxygen. On each simulated day, we can find the atom tracker signs and read a description of what has happened to each atom since our last visit. Here we see an oxygen atom that is part of a water molecule in the leaf of a tree. And then on our next visit, we see that through photosynthesis, the oxygen atom is being released into the air as part of an O2 molecule. As students explore different days at the pond, they discover that on July 28th, all the large fish in the pond are dead. Through the inquiry-based curriculum, students work in teams to collect and analyze data in order to figure out what killed the fish. Once the students have collected all the data, they can use the graphing tool to compare different variables to help them create concept maps that explain why the fish died. Through an exploration of the pond scenario within this immersive simulated environment, students develop a richer understanding of complex causal relationships and ecosystems. The second move is modeled on a hardwood forest ecosystem, like those in the northern part of the United States. Students work in teams to visit two forested islands, Dover and Willis Islands, over a span of 50 years to see how the populations of plants and animals on each island change over time. As we explore the islands, the camera tool lets us take pictures of the organisms we find, and the field guide provides information about the organisms and food web relationships. The zoom tool lets us find smaller animals that are harder to see, like this ovenbird and rabbit. We can also explore the diversity of organisms that inhabit a rotting log at different levels of magnification. The population tool lets us collect population data for the organisms on the island. The calendar tool lets us travel through time in segments of 5 years to see how the populations of different species change over time. To travel between Dover and Willis Islands, we take this boat. On Willis Island, we find the same diversity of organisms, but also a population of wolves. The data view lets us compare the population data we've collected about the two islands. As students explore over time, they discover that on Dover Island, as the deer population grows, the trillium and shrubs are disappearing, as well as ground birds that depend on the understory vegetation as habitat. Meanwhile, Willis Island shows the wolf and deer populations fluctuating in a predator-prey cycle and a continuing diversity of plants and birds. Students work in teams to collect data and create concept maps to explain their hypotheses about the causal relationships and changes they observed in the forest ecosystem.
We hoped you enjoyed our virtual world presentation. Please try these practice activities. Using the virtual world of your choice, create an avatar that you feel represents you. Select a world to visit and use either the chat window or your voice to interact with other users. Take a screen capture and send it to randy68az@gmail.com. Please share your thoughts about virtual environment with your friends and classmates, and try to download and use some of the open source virtual environments. Share your experience.